Ethan Carter lived a quiet life in the city. His days were simple, filled with work at the repair shop and evenings spent alone in his small apartment. He was not a man who expected surprises. He liked routine, the comfort of knowing what tomorrow would bring. But one afternoon his life changed in a way he could never have imagined. A messenger in royal uniform arrived at his door. The man handed Ethan a sealed letter marked with the crest of Queen Evelyn. Ethan stared at it, unsure if it was meant for him. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. The letter was short and direct. The queen herself had asked to see him at the palace. He read the words again and again, trying to understand. Why would a queen want to see him? A man with no title or power? He was not wealthy, not famous, and not known for anything special. The thought made him uneasy. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they had sent the letter to the wrong person. But the guard stood firm, waiting for his reply. Ethan finally nodded. He packed nothing, only taking the clothes he wore. He followed the messenger through the crowded streets. People looked at him with curiosity as they saw the royal escort by his side. Whispers spread quickly.
Oh.
Some thought he was in trouble. Others wondered if he had done something heroic. Ethan kept his head down, feeling the weight of every step. The closer they came to the palace, the stronger his doubt grew. He had never been inside those gates. The palace was a world apart. A place of gold towers and white stone walls that shone in the light. Guards stood at attention, their armor polished, their eyes sharp. He felt small and out of place among them. The messenger led him through the gates and into a long hall. The air was cool, scented with flowers. Portraits of past rulers lined the walls, their painted eyes watching him as he passed. Ethan tried not to stare too much, but he could not help feeling as though history itself was pressing down on him. Servants in fine clothes moved quickly, their faces calm but curious. None spoke to him. The sound of his boots on the polished floor echoed through the hall. Every step made his heart beat faster. He wanted to ask the guard if this was real, but his voice felt locked in his throat. They climbed a wide staircase and reached a set of tall doors. 2 guards pulled them open without a word. Beyond the doors lay the throne room. It was larger than anything Ethan had ever seen. Golden pillars rose high into the ceiling. The floor was smooth marble, shining like water. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long lines of light across the room. At the far end sat Queen Evelyn. She was dressed in a gown of deep blue with silver threads that shimmered as she moved. Her crown rested lightly upon her dark hair, sharp and steady, fixed on Ethan the moment he entered. She did not speak right away. She only studied him in silence. Ethan felt the weight of her gaze. His knees wanted to buckle, but he forced himself to keep walking. He stopped at the center of the room, unsure if he should bow or speak. His mouth was dry. His thoughts spun in circles. Why him? Why now? Why would a queen call for someone like him? The room was quiet. Even the guards at the door stood without sound. Ethan's breathing seemed too loud. He wanted to run, but his feet were frozen. He felt like a man standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. Then Queen Evelyn raised her hand. Her voice was calm, but it carried through the hall. She told him that she had called him here for a reason, said that what he was about to learn would change the way he saw himself forever. Ethan's heart raced. His mind tried to prepare, but nothing could ready him for what was to come. He stood there, caught between fear and curiosity, waiting for the truth that had brought him before the throne. Ethan stood in the throne room, unsure of what to say. Queen Evelyn sat in silence, her eyes fixed on him, as though she was searching for something hidden inside him. The grand chamber around them seemed to fade, leaving only her steady gaze and the sound of his quick breath. He wondered again if this was a mistake, if they had chosen the wrong man. But the queen did not look uncertain. She looked sure. At last she spoke. Her words were calm, but they carried power. She told him to step closer. His legs felt heavy, yet he obeyed. Each step echoed on the marble floor, reminding him that he did not belong in such a place. When he reached the foot of the throne, she dismissed the guards and servants with a simple wave. Soon, the great hall was empty, except for the 2 of them. Ethan felt the air grow heavier in the silence. He lowered his eyes, afraid to meet hers. Then she asked him if he knew why he had been called. His lips parted, but no words came. He shook his head slowly, feeling small under the weight of the question. She nodded, as if she expected that answer. She told him there were truths hidden from him since birth. Truths about his family, about his father, about the reason he was more than just a simple man from the city. Ethan blinked, struggling to believe her words. He thought of his father, who had died years ago. He had been an honest man, working hard to provide for the family. He was quiet and humble, never speaking of glory or honor. To Ethan, he had been nothing more than a kind but ordinary man. Queen Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his face. She explained that his father had once saved her life in secret. It had happened many years ago during a time of danger in the kingdom. A plot had been formed against her, and while others had failed, his father had stood in the shadows and protected her. I had asked for no reward, no recognition. He had returned home and lived quietly until his final day, but she had never forgotten. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He remembered his father's strong hands, his calm voice, his silent strength. He had never imagined that behind that silence was a story of courage. He wanted to doubt it, but the Queen's voice carried no lie. The truth shook him to his core. He was the son of a man who had shaped history without ever telling him. Queen Evelyn told him she had watched over his life from afar, making sure he was safe. Now the time had come for him to know the truth and to take his place. He was more than a repairman in the city, carried a legacy that could not be ignored. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. His hands curled into fists at his sides, not in anger, but in fear of what it all meant. He asked her in a soft voice why she would trust him with this knowledge now. She answered that the kingdom was facing new dangers. She needed people she could trust, people with honor in their blood. She believed Ethan was such a man, even if he could not yet see it himself. His heart pounded as he listened. Part of him wanted to turn away, to return to the safety of his small apartment, to forget this ever happened. But another part of him stirred, a voice deep inside that reminded him of his father's quiet strength. Maybe he too could rise when called, just as his father had. Ethan looked at Queen Evelyn. He saw no cruelty in her eyes, only certainty. She told him that this was not about glory or titles. It was about duty, about protecting the people who could not protect themselves. She asked him if he was ready to carry the weight of his father's legacy. The question hung in the air, pressing on him. He did not answer at once. He felt caught between fear and hope, between the life he knew and the life that waited for him. He stood there, stunned, trying to gather the courage to speak, knowing that whatever he chose would change his future forever. Ethan stood in silence, his mind turning in circles. The words of Queen Evelyn echoed in his head. His father had saved her life, and now she was asking him to carry the same spirit of duty. It felt too big for him, too far from the simple life he knew. He wanted to believe he could walk away, yet deep inside, he knew he could not. Something held him there, rooted to the floor. Queen Evelyn did not push him. She waited, patient, her eyes steady on his. She spoke again, her voice softer now, as if she wanted to ease the storm inside him. She told him that courage was not about being ready, but about stepping forward even when one feels unprepared. His father had done that. He had acted not because he was trained or strong, but because he knew it was the right thing. Ethan raised his head slowly. He asked her what she wanted from him now. Her answer was clear. She wanted him to help her guard the peace of the kingdom. She wanted him to stand with her in moments of need, to be a shield for those who had no one to protect them. He was not to replace soldiers or leaders, but to be someone the queen herself could rely on. Her words felt heavy, yet not cruel. Ethan thought about the nights he had spent alone, believing his life was too small to matter. Now here was the queen telling him that he mattered more than he had ever imagined. It was both terrifying and humbling. He remembered his father's quiet presence. His father had never spoken of bravery, never asked to be seen. It only lived with honor. Ethan felt his throat tighten as he realized that same blood ran through him. Perhaps he too could stand in silence, carrying strength without seeking glory. Queen Evelyn rose from her throne and stepped down to where he stood. She was graceful, but there was strength in every movement. When she stood before him, she looked not like a distant ruler, but like someone who trusted him. She told him again that the kingdom needed him. She said that trust was not easily given, but she was giving it to him now. Ethan lowered his eyes, not from shame, but from the weight of the moment. He whispered that he did not know if he could live up to such trust. The queen placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. She said that doubt was natural, but what defined a person was the choice made in the face of doubt. She reminded him that his father had made such a choice, and that choice had saved her life. The room felt quiet, as though the very walls were listening. Ethan stood still, caught between fear and the pull of something greater. He thought of the people in the city, living their lives unaware of dangers that lurked beyond their reach. He thought of how his father had acted without seeking reward. Slowly, a sense of duty began to stir in his heart. Queen Evelyn stepped back and gave him space. She told him she would not force his answer. He had to decide for himself. But she warned him that the chance would not come again. Once he left the palace, he could return to his old life, and the door to this path would close forever. Her words hung in the air like a test. Ethan's hands trembled as he thought about leaving. He imagined going back to the repair shop, to the quiet nights, to the safe routine. It felt smaller now, almost empty. Then he imagined standing beside the queen, carrying his father's legacy, being part of something that shaped the future. It scared him, but it also filled him with a strange sense of hope. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. He said he did not yet know if he was strong, but he was willing to try. The queen's eyes softened, and for the first time she smiled. She told him that trying was enough, for courage begins with the first step. Ethan felt the ground beneath him steady. He was still afraid, but he no longer wanted to run. He looked at Queen Evelyn and saw not just a ruler, but a guide. In that moment, he began to accept that his life was not meant to stay small. He was standing at the start of something far greater than he had ever dreamed. Ethan woke the next morning in a room inside the palace. He had not expected to be allowed to stay, yet the queen had insisted he rest before facing what was to come. The bed was softer than anything he had ever known, but sleep had not come easily. His mind turned again and again to the words she had spoken. He was the son of a man who had once saved her life. Now she was asking him to take on a role that felt far greater than himself. He rose from the bed and dressed in the simple clothes that had been laid out for him. When a servant arrived to lead him back to the throne room, he followed in silence. Every corner of the palace seemed heavy with history. The painted ceilings, the long halls, the polished floors, all reminded him that this place was built for rulers, not for men like him. When he entered the throne room again, Queen Evelyn was already there. She looked as calm as before, yet there was a kindness in her expression now. She asked him if he had thought about her words. Ethan nodded. He told her he was afraid, but also willing to try. She listened, then told him that fear was not weakness, but proof that he understood the weight of what was asked of him. She explained more about the dangers the kingdom faced. There were those who wanted power for themselves, who cared nothing for the lives of the people. She needed more than soldiers and generals. She needed someone she could trust, someone with no thirst for power, someone who understood humility. She believed Ethan was that person. Ethan listened, his heart pounding. He still wondered why she would see such worth in him. She walked closer to him and spoke of his father again. She told him how his father had once stood in silence, making a choice that had changed her life forever. She believed that same strength lived within Ethan, even if he could not yet see it. Her words lit a small flame in him, a warmth that grew as he thought of the quiet man who had raised him. Ethan asked her what she wanted him to do now. She told him that the choice was his, could leave the palace and return to his old life. Or he could stay and take on the duty of serving as her protector and advisor. It would not be an easy path. He would face trials, doubts, and dangers. But she promised he would never stand alone, for she would stand with him. He felt torn. Part of him longed for the simple safety of his old life. But another part of him, stronger now, wanted to step forward. He remembered the way the queen had looked at him, not as a simple man, but as someone who mattered. He remembered the story of his father's courage. Slowly, he began to see that maybe his life was meant for more than quiet days and small tasks. The queen gave him time to think. She stepped back, her eyes never leaving his. The silence stretched, heavy with meaning. Ethan thought of the people of the kingdom, people who worked and lived as he once did, never knowing what dangers threatened them. He thought of his father's sacrifice, given without ever asking for reward. He thought of the chance to honor that memory. At last he raised his head. His voice shook, but his words were clear. He told her he would accept, would not run from the path laid before him. Queen Evelyn's eyes softened, and she nodded with respect. She told him that he had chosen not for himself but for all who depended on him, and that was true courage. Ethan felt both fear and pride. He was still the same man, yet something had changed inside him. He was no longer only a worker from the city. He was the son of a man who had once saved a queen, and now he had chosen to carry that legacy forward. The weight of it left him breathless, but it also gave him strength. As the queen placed her trust in him, he felt the world shift. His old life was behind him. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time he felt ready to face it. Ethan stood before Queen Evelyn, his choice spoken, his heart still racing. The great hall seemed quieter than before, as if the very walls understood the weight of the moment. The queen looked at him not as a ruler looking down on her subject, but as someone who had placed her trust in him. Her eyes held both pride and calm, and for the first time, Ethan felt that he belonged in her presence. She told him that from this day forward he was no longer just a man from the city. He was a protector of the realm, bound not by oath or crown but by honor. Her words were steady, filled with certainty. Ethan listened, every syllable pressing deeper into his heart. He had never thought his life would matter beyond the walls of his workshop, yet here he was, chosen for a path far greater. A servant entered carrying a cloak, deep blue with a silver edge. The queen lifted it with her own hands and placed it across Ethan's shoulders. It was light in weight but heavy in meaning. She told him that it was not a mark of rank, but a symbol of trust. Wherever he went, people would see not only him, but the choice he had made to serve something larger than himself. Ethan's throat felt tight. He bowed his head not because he was told to, but because it felt right. The queen placed her hand on his arm and told him that his journey would not be easy. There would be trials that tested his courage and doubts that tried to weaken him. But she believed that he would endure because true strength came not from power but from the will to do what was right. He thought of his father again. He remembered the simple man who had raised him, who had worked with quiet dignity and never sought praise. Only now did Ethan understand the depth of that strength. It was not in words or titles, but in the silent choices made in the face of danger. He carried that same blood, that same spirit. The thought gave him courage. The queen stepped back and looked at him one final time. She said that when his father had saved her, he had asked for nothing in return. He had chosen only to act. Now his son had made the same choice. She told Ethan that this was why she trusted him above others, why she had called him into her presence. He was living proof that honor could pass from one generation to the next. The doors to the hall opened, and the guards returned to their posts. Yet the silence between Queen Evelyn and Ethan felt unbroken, as if the moment belonged only to them. He felt a weight lift from him, replaced by a new strength. He was still afraid, but the fear no longer controlled him. He was ready to step forward. Queen Evelyn raised her voice, declaring to those present that Ethan Carter was to be counted among her trusted protectors. The words rang through the hall, and the guards struck their spears against the floor in respect. Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. He had not expected honor, yet it had found him all the same. As the hall filled once more with life, Ethan remained quiet, lost in thought. He knew his life would never be the same. The small apartment, the workshop, the quiet days, they all seemed like a dream fading into the distance. Before him stretched a path of service, sacrifice, and meaning. It was frightening, yet it also filled him with hope. When the queen dismissed him, he turned and walked toward the doors. Each step felt heavier, yet also stronger, as though the marble floor itself was carrying him forward. He knew that outside these walls people lived unaware of the moment that had just taken place. He would carry the memory of it always, not as a burden, but as a promise. As the great doors closed behind him, Ethan felt the cloak rest against his shoulders. It was more than fabric. It was his father's memory, the queen's trust, and his own choice woven together. The weight left him stunned, but it also made him stand taller. He had entered the palace as a simple man. He left it as something more, though he could not see what waited beyond. He was ready to face it with courage and hope.